Good evening and happy holidays. As Vice Chairman of the Hartford Board of Education, I hereby call to order the December 6, 2022 special meeting. Tonight's workshop topic is Fall 2022 Culture and Climate Results. Attachments can be found in the meeting's agenda on board docs. As you may have noticed, we are in person, finally. Because the following workshop session, we will be going into executive session to discuss personal matters related to the superintendent. Future workshops will remain virtual. At this moment, we are going to turn this portion of our meeting over to our superintendent, Dr. Leslie Torres Rodriguez.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to unpack the results of our Fall 2022 Climate and Culture Survey. The full list of questions and all of the response rates have been shared with the Board of Education members prior to the meeting, and a reminder to our community that our public-facing dashboards are accessible via our Hartford Public Schools website. They'll also be available following this meeting. Want to just quickly review, Christina, and Ms. Santiago in the next slide, the agenda and the flow, beginning with an introduction to the survey tool, the review of the 2022 climate and culture opportunities, and key findings from the fall 2022-23 administration and some next steps. We're going to start by regrounding in the purpose and the process for the why behind the survey. And I guess point of clarification for going through the data and then stop for questions?
Yes.
Excellent. Put it closer to me. So the purpose of the Climate and Culture Survey, it is one of the many tools that we use in the district to better understand how our work is impacting our students, our families, and staff members. It provides insights into how we're measuring against our mission. In the next slide, Ms. Santiago, mission, vision, and our priorities, highlighting areas of success and, of course, the opportunity areas for our continuous improvement. The results of this survey also inform the goals that our school leaders set for themselves, their schools. Each of our school leaders are required to have at least one stakeholder feedback objective as part of their formal evaluation process. This goal is rooted in their school level culture and climate data. And culture and climate is a critical and a multi-dimensional, there are many aspects to culture and climate, and it greatly impacts student learning, development, and the experiences of staff and parents. It helps to measure student and staff sense of belonging and connectedness, the strengths of relationships, right? Students to staff, families to schools, schools to community. Also the measure of instruction, the learning resources and supports, and teacher practice, and also student and staff well-being. So culture and climate is so important because it is a critical lever in supporting many of our major and secondary goals, which, by the way, we're going to be discussing later in our executive session as part of goal setting process. So here's just a visual, especially for our community, to see that the information today, right, ties to priority 2 in terms of how we develop a system of supports that promote student engagement within the community, and priority 3 specifically, our work around partnerships with families and the communities to support academic success and healthy development. So a reminder for most of our board members, this is going to be a reminder for most of you, but there might be some that are viewing that might need a little background on the survey itself and how we engage our families. So the survey was open to students, staff, and families for just over 6 weeks, from early October to mid-November. We saw an increase in participation, which you can see in the green bubble there, um, as compared to last fall's survey responses. As a district, we created and shared a survey toolkit with all schools to ensure that all potential respondents were engaged in a similar way and participated in the survey with a level of uniformity. District and school-based communication encouraging participation went out to our families via our communication tools and methods, weekly messages from my office, several flyers, and schools also offered several incentives to get their school communities to increase completion. So what we want to do tonight is take a quick look back and then update on the spring of 2022, a few items and trends there, provide an overview of the recent results, and we also want to recognize areas that we should celebrate and, of course, areas that we want to improve. So before we dig into this year's results, just a quick pause and reflect on what happened since we administered the survey last spring. Right, there were 3 opportunities that were lifted in our previous meeting when we reviewed the spring data. One was around cleanliness, and so in response to next steps since the spring, right, culture and climate walkthroughs conducted last year lifted the need for increased communication and a routine, a cadence of touch points between school leaders, facilities, and the district. So based on feedback from school leaders, cleaning schedules were adjusted, and in some cases, there were staffing resource shifts from, for example, second shift to first shift, as well as increased communication, which has allowed for preventive measures to be implemented. To address vacancies, because there were some vacancies in this area, we've increased the resources within our talent management team focused on non-certified staffing. So partnering with department leaders actually allowed for us to target potential candidates in new and different ways. Lots of flyering and community events. And the team in OTM has been able to fill 4 of the vacant custodian positions. We still have 8 vacancies that remain open. Another area that was recognized last spring as an opportunity was around students feeling of connection and belonging to their school. We know that, right, the pandemic and remote learning had a significant impact on the way that our students were able to connect with communities, with their learning communities, and this certainly was something that we're focused on and continue to be focused on. So because of that, we are committed to recovering the sense of connection, and I'm glad to say that we have made some moderate gains since the last survey in the spring. As part of the strategic plan, some of you are aware of the focus on increasing opportunities for students to share voice, support each other in peer-to-peer mentoring programs, and participate in an increased cadence, more opportunities for celebrations and events that showcase their talents and our students' personal growth. There was also the strategic allocation of ESSER dollars, specifically through our school-based equity innovation grants, that had a lot of focus on engaging our students and families to their learning communities. And the last, another trend, thank you, Ms. Santiago, on the next slide. The last opportunity recognized in the spring was around the perceived value of professional learning. And the fact that we are fully back in in-person professional learning has led to an increase in not just attendance, but in participation from our adult learners. The Office of Academics has been more intentional in creating spaces during sessions for small group collaborative work, as well as more discussion, so that staff feel more comfortable and have time to learn from and with their peers. So I wanted to just provide an opportunity to connect to where we left off last time. So now to a snapshot of participation rates. It helps us understand how trustworthy the data are. The higher participation is, the more likely the data represent all voices in the community. Traditional survey research required 26% participation in order to generalize to a wider population. Our participation numbers exceed this criteria for students and staff, and we still are focusing on increasing the participation rate for families, as you can see, is at 23%. So it's a little under that 26% that research speaks to. We did see a slight decrease in participation among families and staff from the spring of 2022. It's also important to note that all groups had an increase in participation as compared to the fall of 2021. Okay, so we're going to dive in. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in the next series of slides, just to kind of orient you to the flow, there are 2 slides for each priority. This is the same format and presentation as the last time, where the first slide presents the highest rated items for the priority for each respondent group, and then the second slide presents the items with the lowest favorability for that priority, again, by respondent group. So if we look at this first slide, the items on this slide and the next describe items related to teaching and learning, right? Priority 1. These are the highest items from each respondent for teaching and learning. And just to do a comparison, as you look across the ratings there, in the spring of 2021, caring about student learning was the top choice for each group. In the spring of 2022, technology took the lead for students and families, but caring about learning held the highest favorability rating for staff. So for the most recent survey, technology and care for learning are on the top for student ratings, while care for learning is at the top for family and staff ratings. And so what I see when I look at these results is a recognition by our community that our teachers are committed to our students and that our students have access to technology to support with their learning. Now, if we go to the next slide, these are the teaching and learning items with the lowest favorability. And the ratings are still relatively positive, as you see across. The student ratings have shown us that, for example, the question that is, I like what I'm learning at school, received the lowest favorability rating from students. It's at 68%. This item, in addition to the other 2 that are listed here, are part of the ongoing work in the Office of Academics, which addresses with our walkthrough tools that look for very specific indicators. For example, instructional coaches are supporting this work at the school level to improve student outcomes. Even though our students reported they had access to technology, less of our families are reporting having a school-issued device. So the difference in the response rates, right, from students and families for this question is something that Chief Davis Gooch has already identified as an opportunity to further understand, like, why is it that families are feeling one way and our students are feeling another way? And while this one of the lowest favorability ratings, we're encouraged to see that over 75% of families reported their child reads regularly and that they are engaging in college and career planning activities together. Lastly, for our staff, the same 3 items that you see there listed to the right were lifted again as having the lowest favorability. So you'll see actually in my next step slides that teacher support and high expectations for all continue to be a focus for our Office of Academics. If we transition over to the next priority, welcoming culture, nurturing climate priority, items lending in favorability ratings relate to friends and caring adults. Friends and caring adults ratings were in the 80s last year. They went up to the 90s last spring and are high again this fall as teachers and students begin to build relationships, right? They began to focus on that work at the start of the school year. I'll just pause here for a moment so that you can kind of look across. Again, these are the highest favorability ratings. If we transition to the next slide, students not attending school, if they don't have a uniform, have the lowest agreement ratings across all groups. So this is actually a positive outcome, but it also calls for us to take a closer look at students who are chronically absent and those who don't come to school if they lack a uniform. Like we have, at least I thought we were very explicit to say that, first of all, no student should be home because they don't have a uniform. Like that should not be the barrier. You don't have a uniform, still come to school, and then we will help solve for that here for our families. So we want to understand what that's about. And then also, while above 50% of students agreeing that they like coming to school, right? You see here 56% to the left, middle left. This area is something that we are also going to examine deeper because we want to learn, right, about those student challenges that may contribute to these perceptions. Similar to last spring, a slight increase in the number of students, it actually just a slight increase from 59 to 60%, agree that an adult will miss me when I'm absent. And as part of our comprehensive planning, we are identifying strategies to address these items. There was a specific question there, as you can see in the middle row, the middle column. Families rated the LGBTQ plus items similarly to previous surveys. And as you all know, right, you as a board adopted a new transgender policy this fall, which will support our work in schools to help our LGBTQ plus students feel transgender and LGBTQ plus students feel more welcome, valued, and seen in our schools. If we transition, Ms. Santiago, to the next priority 3, engaging families and community partnerships. Communication between teachers and families continues to be a question where we actually see alignment between the respondent groups and a high favorability rating. These items were also highest rated in spring 2021, spring 2022. And so to further enhance the family engagement, our board adopted a family engagement Title I policy in August with your leadership in the policy committee, Board Member Johnson, and families were engaged in the writing of this policy, clarifying Title I meeting cadences at school, and that also included partnership with families in the decision making related to allocating the Title I funds. On the other side of that spectrum, the lowest favorability ratings, one thing we noticed when looking at the favorability ratings here is the gap in awareness and participation in after-school programming and family-focused events. So our Office of Family and Community Partnerships is working with our school-based engagement teams, right? The family and community support providers, our student engagement specialists, and leadership teams so that we can get better at publicizing and communicating, sharing out the school events, and build that better rapport with families so that they're aware of school-based happenings and district resources available. So we'll also have to continue to offer our events in a hybrid model so that families can join in the way that they most feel comfortable or that it's most convenient for them depending on need. And if we move into our fourth priority, uh, what we see here is actually a little exciting. Um, Students, families, and staff agree that our teachers are good at teaching. We also see favorability from families and staff when it comes to safety in the classroom environment. So I'll give you a minute to kind of glance at these. If we look at the lowest favorability ratings on the next slide, cleanliness continues to remain an important element of improving our climate and culture. If you look to the middle row across all groups, right? Students feel that 55% of the students, right? There's 55% believe that their school building is clean. Our families, 88%, and then staff, 77%. So the Office of Operations will continue to work with our custodial supervisors and their teams to identify and address the specific areas that are of concern by their school communities, and see if we can better understand why there's that gap between students and staff ratings. Additional attention will be given to schools with the lowest favorability ratings. I know that this is an aggregate, but right, every school has their own data set with regard to the climate, culture, and climate results. And I said earlier that we still had 8 vacancies for in our custodial team, and so Office of Talent Management will continue to try to help fill those vacancies. We know that our COVID-19 sanitation protocols remain in place. We continue to prioritize the health and safety of our community. And we know that right now there is an increase of illness across our district, probably across the state, with the flu season arriving even earlier this year. So we're going to continue to encourage our staff, students, and families to follow those protocols. And in my next few slides, I'll actually kind of zoom out into how we're thinking about monitoring safety and well-being in our schools and how that fits into our overall district scorecard, which is, right, we're going to use to measure our success as we continue to recover from and accelerate outcomes after the pandemic. Few more slides here. And this is actually a quick visual for our community. While our 4 priorities remain the same within our strategic plan, there are major goals based on recent data that have been updated. We're going to discuss that in executive session. But the major goals give us a better understanding of the impact of learning loss from reduced classroom time and, quite frankly, to account for a more equitable approach to quantifying success. There's a couple shifts, and I'll just kind of voice them over more so for the community, because I know as board members we're gonna dive into that a little later. But one of the most significant changes that I'm proposing with regard to the major goals is the inclusion of average percent of target achieved for both ELA and math, rather than a focus on grade level proficiency as a major goal. Proficiency still will remain a secondary goal. The thinking here is that it's a more equitable measure, as we believe that all of our students are capable of achieving their growth targets, and that all teachers are also capable of ensuring that their students achieve that sort of growth. Um, so we'll dive into that a little later. I just wanted to highlight that there are specific questions here that we've added to the scorecard. There are 3 measures of success from our culture and climate surveys that are now in the scorecard. And so I'll dig into those now in the next slide. This is one of the 3. So right now, the way it's landing as District Major Goal 6. This question focuses on families feel that their child is supported in their schools with the appropriate resources, qualified staff, and access to opportunities necessary for them to succeed. So currently, we're pacing close to our 91%, which is encouraging, but we know that we have to constantly seek for ways that we can expand upon the supports that we offer to our families. The next question that we have added to our scorecard, Major Goal 7, is addresses directly to our students, asking them if they feel connected to their school. Here, we're outpacing our goal of 60%, but we know that there is a lot of work to do among the students that answered, right? When you look at the other 2, they're neutrally, or that they felt they were not connected to their school. 17%, right, reported not connected to their school. So that work specifically includes efforts of our ACE teams, increasing, for example, student athletic extracurricular opportunities, developing more robust student performances and assemblies, ensuring that our teachers create welcoming environments. And we know that we are going to look to continue to customize students, right, the opportunities and the pathways for our students. We acknowledge that we have to be mindful of what the pandemic did to a feeling of connection among our entire community. And so we want to stay focused on our efforts to regain that connection between everyone in our community. And the last one that I'll highlight, Major Goal 8. Right? Remember I said there were 3 from the Culture and Climate Survey that now have been added to our scorecard. Safety. Safety has been top of mind for all of us across the district. So we felt that the perception of safety was a crucial addition, right? An added data point that was necessary. One thing here, when you look at these displays, one thing that is glaring, stands out about this slide is the difference in how students responded to feeling safe versus how our staff responded, right? There's a wide gap between the favorability ratings of the 2. This is mainly rooted in the difference of the neutral, right? When you see the gray areas there. So as we continue to kind of keep an eye on this metric, it's going to be important to reevaluate our survey to ensure that students have an understanding of the question and the choices of the responses. We also need to go deeper into the school-based responses, as well as when the survey was completed, when during the school year the survey was completed. A feeling of safety we know that it can be a reaction to a very recent event in the school or in the community. Perhaps it could be a response to the implementation of new safety measures like the crisis drills, communication protocols, maybe professional learning, maybe the implementation of our metal detectors, right? There's a lot of different things that could be informing of how the respondents, right, agree, disagree. And the last thing I want to note about this slide is that we know safety can take on so many forms. Last year, most respondents may have reacted to how they felt regarding COVID safety. This year, it might be more about their emotional or their physical safety. So the question can be broad. So I think a deeper analysis is needed to see how we can best meet or even exceed our goal. Okay. And one more slide here. Last year, we piloted the culture and climate walkthroughs to complement the survey so that leaders across all levels of the district could understand, right, what students, staff, families were experiencing and develop the appropriate supports to meet the needs of schools. That process actually has continued, and all 39 schools have completed their first set of walkthroughs. And this is a collaboration between the teachers, principals, the Office of School Leadership. School teams were able to review the results and develop a plan for enhancing the culture and climate, and that report will be released in January. And then for us at the district level, we reviewed the data from the survey, and each chief identified how they would use it to inform the work in their department. Each item you see, right, you saw on the screen is a direct response to also qualitative feedback. And so we wanted to show, I'm just going to talk over some action steps that our departmental leaders, our chiefs have identified. One is understanding how families use our communication tools and see what they're most connected to. Is there a better way that we can increase engagement? Another one that was identified was changing how we promote and share the events and the resources to increase family satisfaction and participation. We don't have the answer for that, but that is something that our team is going to focus on. Also, assessing whether our one-to-one device program and the new asset tagging protocol that we have, does it make sense? Is it efficient? The finance team, Chief Penn and his team identified they wanted to know more about some of the comments made about the finance department in supporting customer services and improving the internal processes. And so that's very specific to the support that the finance team offers schools and departments. And challenge with regard to continuing to focus staff supports needed to have excellent teachers come to the district, stay in the district. And I guess the last reminder, we have some future survey dates. We know that Hartford, the requirement from the state does not require that we administer surveys as frequently as we do. We in Hartford Public Schools choose to do that. So we'll be administering a shortened version of the Culture and Climate Survey in the winter to measure progress and refine any actions and action plans. And then we'll conduct the full survey again in the spring and sharing the results with all of you and with our community as we progress through the school year. That was a lot said. I will pause now.
Mic check 1, 2. All right, we live. We live. All right, thank you so much, Superintendent, for walking us through our culture and climate results for fall 2022. And I want to open the floor up to my colleagues for any questions, and even if we have to walk it back. So try to, if you do have comments, try to, on the PowerPoint that was given, give a page and number if there is, or a heading, so we can follow along with you. So I will open it up to my colleagues for any comments or any questions they may have. Board Member Brody.
Thank you. So definitely appreciate the survey, hearing from our students, families, and staff. Some of the questions that just, I don't have a question, I have a comment that jumped out for me, is I eat healthy foods. They didn't feel they ate healthy foods at home. I mean, excuse me, at school, being that we, with the lunch menus. So I'm like, that was a little bit confusing to me, being that I know what the lunch menu is. I'm hoping we're still trying to push and get the family participation higher. I in the no, not like the superintendent said. If they don't have a uniform, they don't feel they could come to school. I'm wondering with that one though, like, is it kind of like unsaid, right? They know that is an emphasis heavily on uniform, so they just feel like I couldn't come to school without it because they're constantly reminded of what it should be. So I think that might be like they're digesting that I'm constantly reminded when I'm not in uniform, so maybe I can't come to school without it, and I can. And the students feeling safe in class. And I think that was from the teachers, even though 80-something% is high, but it was like, you don't feel like the students are safe. And how, it's just so many underlying questions that I know school level, at the school level, it'll get addressed. Because if you don't feel your students are safe, what are you proposing, like, to administration to make it a more safe environment? But again, it may be to the timing of the survey. Probably the only question I do actually have is understanding the students' participation and how that was facilitated, what grades, what that were able to indulge in a survey.
Thank you. And then a little coaching here. Chief Avila is here, and can you speak to the specific grades, because we don't administer to all grades. And then if you can also, I know you had a comment about it, Ms. Brody, but I think it's important for us to talk to some of the efforts made to increase participation, to increase the responses at the school level.
So the survey is administered to grades 3 to 12. And they're allotted a specific time to take the survey. And so for middle school through high school, it's usually during advisory that they have a lot of time to take the survey, and really try to make every effort to have all the students take it during that time. It's not just one given day. So there's a window in which students are allotted, but there is specific times, and if someone missed to take the survey, then teachers continue to encourage them to take the survey. And the goal is to have 100% participation from all students. And so we're pushing that. I think that some of our students may have survey fatigue as well, and that might be a factor in which that we don't have 100% of participation yet. But we do encourage them to take the survey on all grade levels. As far as for families and parents, the FCSSP, the SCSs, student engagement specialists, often make phone calls home. Reminders are sent on Parent Square, as well as during parent-teacher conferences is an opportunity that we remind parents, and we left it open intentionally for families during that time as well, so that they are encouraged to also share their feedback, and that we really value the feedback of parents and really need their feedback in the survey as well.
You also, Ms. Brody, you also asked about the healthy food piece, and yes, we're going to dive in a little closer into that response, but there is a connection there with that question. The North Hartford Ascend Pipeline actually requested for that question to be part of our survey, given that there's a connection to the work that we're doing over there. So I just not sure if anyone had a wondering as to why are we asking specifically about that, but that's where it came from.
Okay, and one follow-up comment, just, I know before, like you can't have it both ways, right? Before you could do a survey and we don't know who's doing a survey because you're just doing a survey. Now you have to put in some identifying information. So I'm thinking maybe for parents that may be, I don't know if we could possibly, if we have parent-teacher conferences and we have them in the building, and they could do a paper one if we have them like on site and we could just manage it. But I'm wondering if that's some type of, I don't want to put my child ID number in because they'll know it's me and the principal get it, and just knowing that it's clean, you won't be identified by staff with being honest. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Brody. And I believe Board Member Oliver was next. Got to hold it down.
Hello? Okay, hold on. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the findings from the survey. I really do appreciate it. I have basically two questions. One is connected to the question that was asked in terms of the way it's administered to families and students. So for our staff, it was also lower than the target. So just wondered if the staff also had a specific time or if they were trying to do it during their prep time, et cetera. So that's my first question.
Staff does have allocated time as well. It can be on a half day, can be at a staff meeting as well. So that we, as we know the results are coming in, they're also continue to encourage that to have the same, to participate and give feedback so that we can also hear their feedback because we value the staff feedback as well.
Okay, thank you. That's great to hear. So the other one that I did have a question, or maybe it's just a comment, it's on the key findings for high quality teaching and learning, and it's the lowest favorable ratings. Under the staff column, the first one at 68% being the lowest, all students are capable of meeting grade level expectations. And the reason I don't know exactly what my question is because I know so much work has been done by Superintendent Yu, the cabinet, everyone just really ensuring that we do have high expectations, and we know there's a saying of the soft bigotry of low expectations, especially as it relates to our children, and more data that's coming out that our students actually could be successful with grade level high quality materials. So with that being said, I'm a little bit surprised to see this one as the lowest. I guess maybe I'm just doing a check here to know, Superintendent, Chief Avila, are you also both surprised to see this? And if so, perhaps what are some thinking or actions planned for that? Thank you.
Yes, so I would say these are some of the harsher, not a truth, but a harsh data point, because it also connects to belief systems and perceptions, and the way in which we are going to continue to get at this is through the work that we've done around the instructional vision, which specifically calls for having those, not just the high expectations, but the resources and the supports for students as well as for our staff, right? For our staff to have the understanding, the knowledge base, the skill set, and the disposition around standards aligned instruction, around making sure that our students have tasks that call for rigor while also providing the supports, the scaffolds necessary.
Thank you. So I'm hearing you're still working it through and really trying to unpack what exactly that means.
And that it is an ongoing process as I reflect on the fact that we have over 400 new, right? We welcomed over 400 educators. And so there's a lot of work that we have to continue to do to unpack the instructional vision. Our walkthroughs also, and our Chief Avila, you can speak to the IOPs, because it also gets us into the classrooms to see what exactly, right, we're asking our students to do, and that gets connected to the professional learning cycle that happens after that. So if you can speak to the ILPs and the role that our school leaders play in this process as well, Board Member Oliver.
ILP stands for Instructional Leadership Practice, and it's an opportunity for admit school leaders to practice instructional leadership. We meet once a month with both the assistant principals and the principals, and they have an opportunity to unpack the curriculum and focus on standards and what's expected to be seen in a classroom with standard-based instruction. We visit the classrooms and have the opportunity to unpack and debrief the actual lesson that has been seen so that they really understand, and to calibrate it on our evaluation system. One of the indicators is high expectations that we look at in the CCT rubric, so that we're looking at whether or not they have high expectations as well as the teachers having high expectations. And I would say that I'm going to speak for Dr. Negron for a minute and really say that as part of the professional learning that's happening with teachers, that supporting them understanding how to have those expectations and what that looks like in a student task, and how to support the student to be successful with those tasks is an area of focus in the professional learning. So that percentage of staff that feels that they're not capable, so that during the professional learning, they learn how they can support them to achieve on grade level.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Just checking in, any other comments from my colleagues? As we are, as I'm looking, I just want to kind of sprinkle in my questions as well, but I also want to recognize our board chair who just arrived. I'm really impressed with these numbers. Being someone who often travels the community and hears a variety of different feelings about Hartford Public Schools, whether in a grocery store, at a gas station, or in the bathroom. You'll be surprised where people give you their opinion about their child's education. I think that these numbers are a lot better than I assumed it to be with where we are. So I do have a couple questions, and I also want to give a shout out to our teachers as well. 91% of most of my teachers are good at teaching, right? Like that is an amazing. So I want to shout out our teachers in Hartford Public Schools that are doing an amazing job. But where I do want to point out is, or a question that I want to ask is, was this survey out during the major incidents of last year? Or early part of, last part of last year, early part of this year, during some of the major incidents that we had, and is that reflected in the survey? When we think of SMSA, when we think of the incidents at Weaver High School, is that data like in the middle of this?
So this, not for last year, so this one specifically fall,
Yes.
the answer is yes. So over 6 weeks beginning in October. And the specific incident at Weaver was the first to the second week of October. So perhaps. So one way to answer that is to double click on Weaver's data, which it is actually is one of the schools that has some pockets that would indicate that staff, students, and families felt differently around safety. So you have a excellent point there that, yes, incidents do impact, right? How, not just our students, families, and staff, but how we all potentially could respond to a survey.
And so it is reflected. Okay.
For some, but what I was answering to when, your question as to when.
Yes, yes.
So the answer is definitely yes. The survey went from beginning of October to mid-November for 6 weeks, and the incident at Weaver happened toward the end of the first week into the second week.
Okay. My next question is with the family response snapshot participation rates. And I see here participation all-stars. I see Hartford Pre-Kindergarten Magnet School, 67%. Pretensis Learning Lab Magnet School, 65.2%. Environmental Sciences Magnet at Hooker, 60.5%. Pretensis STEM Magnet School, 53.1%. Montessori Magnet at Batchelder School, 51.4%, with a fall participation goal of 39%. And my question is, and again, not knowing the information or having any other level of information, is why don't I see the schools in my neighborhood participating in this survey? Or not participating, but as a part of the all-star list?
So I'm trying to connect with Ms. Santiago on, I don't have, is that in the appendix? Got it. So the appendix, we showed the schools with the highest participation rates
Mhm.
and the lowest participation rates. But we can get you, if you're asking about the data for all schools, we have that. That would include the schools in your neighborhood.
And so is it a fair assessment to say that they would fall in the lower participation rates compared to a Hartford Pre-K Magnet School at 67.9%?
I don't have the information in front of me to tell you if that's where they fall.
Okay.
But I can certainly get the information to you.
Okay. My final question is, I guess, is more of an opinion more than it is statistics in the snapshot on this data. But where's the disconnection between the data and how the community is engaging, right? I see, so for example, I am very shocked and appreciative of the work that we're doing, and when I read it on paper, it feels great. But somehow when we are, and I can't speak for all, but it seems as if there are more questions and concerns of individuals, right? Again, this is more of an opinion question. So where is our data and our, not say communication, but why is this not leading the conversation when we actually have some really, really great talking points and really great things to celebrate? Where's the disconnection from the school level to the district level in terms of this information, and why isn't it like not being communicated? I mean, obviously, I'm a parent, so I go on Parent Square. You know, I'm one of those people who's just always on there because I want to keep up with the information. But I also understand that everybody's not going to look at Parent Square and see and read. Like, I understand those dynamics. But why isn't some of these 75% leading the conversation, are 84% leading the conversation? Where do you see that disconnect between this information and the average parent or average community member?
So I think that could be a multifaceted answer. One thing that comes to mind, only because of a recent meeting several of us had with a group of parents, is as to preference and comfortability that they have accessing the way in which we communicate. I mean, we have some, specifically our monolingual families that say, well, Parent Square does not work for me. even though parents could translate in Spanish, for example, right? They prefer something that is translated in a hard, they want something that they can interact with, that is translated. Other parents wanted to get it in an email. And I know that that's a technical response, but it is something that we heard loud and clear when we met with some families, that we have to now provide multiple ways for our families to access the information that we're providing. And that makes me wonder if we also have to have multiple ways for families to engage and partner with us.
That's fair. Thank you. Final question, and I think Board Member Walker, do you have a question? Final question is, and this may be a silly question, but I think it's just for public consumption. This survey was available in English and Spanish in all of the many languages that we.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Board Member Walker?
Thank you.
63 languages to be exact.
63 languages. Thank you.
So on page 14, there's engaging family and community partnerships. There's favorability, 86%. I attend parent-teacher conferences at my child's school. So I'll repeat the question that page 14, 86%, I attend parent-teacher conferences at my child's school. My anecdotal feedback from teachers don't reflect that, so I'm wondering, as you're talking to your staff, do you have the sense that 9 out of 10 parents or 8 out of 10 parents are attending these parent-teacher conferences? This number seems a little generous on what are you hearing from your staff?
One thing I actually want to look at is the participation rate, right? So when we think about the amount of families that responded, so 23% of our families responded, and so that might
I thought maybe that the active
that
ones are
might
the ones.
be the backdrop.
So there's a little skewing, which is fine. I just wanted to point that out, that it's.
Oh.
Can you hear me now? Okay, I'll repeat the question.
I don't think it's you, Board Member Walker. I think it's the device. So if you just repeat your question, and I can repeat it for you so they can hear you.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Okay, thank you. I was asking about survey response on slide 14 under family engagement and community partnerships. It was 86%. I attend parent-teacher conferences at my child's school. My observation from talking to some teachers that this number seems high in terms of parents that they record and see coming to schools. And so I was asking, does this reflect what staff and teachers actually see during parent-teacher conferences?
And my response was that we have to consider, as a backdrop, the amount of families that responded to the survey. Given that when we look at the three groups, our families was the lowest, the group with the smallest response rate at 23%. And so perhaps, right, that impacts the group that responded.
Thank you, Superintendent. I think that does get at some of this. I have a second question on slide 13. Under welcoming culture, nurturing climate, the students report 56%, I like coming to school. And I know we've been talking about a persistent absenteeism issue. I just wanted to ask the question, do we think that the current initiatives we have are addressing that concern of, in essence, almost 50% of the students are saying they really don't like coming to school? Or do we think we need some further initiatives to address that student hesitation about coming to school?
I can start, and then Chief Avila, you can add from your ACE lens. I think it's continue to do some of the work that we're doing, Mr. Walker, with regard to the barriers behind that sit behind that response. We know that there are barriers, and students share with us that the relevancy is something that students are challenging us to improve. Relevancy between what they're learning and the real world. Our students, there's not one time that we engage students individually or in focus groups that they don't tell us more pathways, more project-based learning, more internships, more job shadows. And so I think that is part of the work that we want to do when we talk about the redesign, right? We want to engage our entire community around what do these experiences need to look like, sound like, and feel like for our students. That is very clear.
Okay, thank you. Those sound like they would be great things to grow within our district. And I would invite us to continue to monitor that particular number for some improvement. I'll point to one other number. This is under high quality teaching and learning. I think this is slide 11. 76% is one of the lower scores under I learn about diverse people and cultures. I'm elevating this as a question because I've heard this year that world languages is lagging a little bit in the district. And so I am wondering if there's some correlation around the modest world language offerings we have and this response that fewer students feel like they're learning about diverse people and cultures.
I'm not sure if there's a correlation with regard to the world languages for, I guess, our high school students, right? Because when we think about world languages, some middle and definitely high school. I think, learning about diversity and different cultures is not only focused in our world language classes. And so it could be that there might be a correlation there, Mr. Walker, but I also want to highlight that happens also through our social and emotional learning opportunities and the curriculum that we expose students to. For example, Second Step, right, for the lower grades, looks at diversity at an age appropriate, right, in age appropriate activities. So it could be a correlation, but also it's something that we expose students to in other areas of their learning.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Rigger.
Good evening. Again, apologies for being late. I do have a quick question that might have been addressed earlier, but just piggybacking off of the conversation around meeting, I guess, families and students and teachers where they're at in terms of communication. The first thing that came to mind, right, is there the opportunity here to develop an omni-channel strategy, right, where there's multiple avenues and platforms that we engage with our stakeholders. But I guess more of a kind of technical operational question. When I look at the response rates, particularly for families and staff, do we have the...
Can we hear him? Because someone is texting me they can't hear you.
When looking at our response rates, again, an operational question, do we have the ability to take a look at who actually opened the emails, maybe opened the survey and not complete. Okay, I think that would lend light to if the message is actually getting to the people that is intended to. So, right, so for example, I mean, at 23.2%, that's clearly there's room for improvement there. So my question is, right, was there another maybe 40% of families or parents or caretakers that actually opened the survey but just like didn't finish, right? Didn't start. Um, and I think that might lend itself to insights in terms of how we engage or better engage with our families, students, and staff. So again, not necessarily a question, but just an observation, and I think it's something worthwhile to explore.
Are there any other questions? Looking to my colleagues. Got some head nods. All right. Are you ready? Are we ready to wrap up, Superintendent? All right.
We're done.
Thank you for, just making sure. Thank you for joining us for today's workshop. We wish everyone a good evening. We will now go into executive session to discuss personal matters related to the superintendent. Do I have a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. We will be taking with us into executive session Superintendent Torres Rodriguez and Christina Santiago. Have a blessed evening.
Still there, Christina? I just can't hear you. It's just on fire.